Hello everyone, welcome back. Yesterday I went over all the most recent news for the Division 2 following my 1 week hiatus. Thanks for tuning in to that video, I really appreciate it. Today I want to touch on one of the topics specifically, and that is the Summit XP farm and other farming XP methods. This is because Massive will be making changes, and it appears this will likely apply not just to the Summit, but other methods too. For example, the resource convoy. Drop a like and subscribe to stay up to date with all my videos, and let's take a look at this. Now if you head on over to the known issues board under the investigating subheading, you're going to see this. As you can see, it says Summit XP changes floor 10, repeatedly killing the same NPCs on a boss floor of the Summit to gain XP has never been the intention of the mode and encounter. Therefore, we will be addressing the gains from this method and potentially others in an upcoming patch. More details to be shared at a later date. Now if you aren't aware of this XP method, you basically get to floor 10 of the Summit however you want. I normally just go on normal mode until you're on floor 10. You enter a particular encounter, you kill all the NPCs, at which point you will receive an incredible amount of XP, mainly because you can add a ton of modifiers on. I normally add about 5 modifiers when I do this. Now once this has completed, you'll then kill yourself and you'll respawn back at the start of that floor, and you can just repeat this method. Now in total it takes like, I don't know, maybe a minute or so. I think when I personally did it from start to finish it took me about 40 seconds or so. So it's very quick. Obviously a minute or so each time, and basically with each run you can get, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing heroic and like 8 directives or whatever, I think you can probably get 1 shade level per run, or at least close to it. I normally do challenging on 5, and that normally gives me around, I think it's about 450,000 XP, so a ton of XP there, and it's just an incredible way to earn shade levels, an incredible way to earn experience, you know, stuff that you're going to need with each new season, grind those season ranks, that sort of stuff. Now I did a video on this, as I said a couple of weeks ago. I will leave a link to this in the description below for any of you guys wanting to check that out. So firstly, I guess the question I have for you guys is, do you think the Summit XP farm should be fixed? Now I say fixed because Massive have said this method is not intentional. It is an exploit. It's not a bannable exploit or anything like that, but it is an exploit of what's currently in the game. Now personally, I don't see an issue with it, and actually think this is one of the times where an unintended gameplay exploit, gameplay loop, whatever you really want to call it, being fixed would be to the detriment of the game, or certainly to the detriment of the Summit game mode in this example. In most cases, unintended issues affecting a game need to be fixed for obvious reasons, right? And I think most people would agree with me there from that statement, but there will be a number of negative implications if Massive do fix this somehow. For example, I'd love to see the proportion of players who go into the Summit who actually go through the whole experience compared to those who do go there to farm level 10. Now I don't know anyone myself that actually uses the Summit for its intended purpose, and that's because the Summit experience as a whole, I don't believe, is a good one. And sure, there's going to be some of you guys who disagree with me there, but I think the majority of people will agree with me again. I fear that fixing this XP farm will cause the Summit to become as barren as Kenley College. Of course, I don't know exactly how the majority of people use the Summit. I'm only speaking from personal experience and what I've seen and what I see other people do. But, you know, I only ever see people running the Summit for targeted loot or XP farming. So if you get rid of the XP stuff, there's targeted, you obviously got the targeted loot, and the majority of the time, you know, you're going to get that from elsewhere, right? Most of the time you're going to be targeted loot elsewhere just because of the other number of places to do it. And so I really don't see why people are even going to go into the Summit if they nerf the XP there, which is what I think they'll do. On top of this then, Massive confirmed they will be addressing the gains from this method and potentially others. What could they be referring to here? While the only other method that can compete with the Summit XP farm is the resource convoy XP farm, some might argue this method is actually better as well, but I'm not so sure, I've not tested that myself. If Massive decide to reduce the XP from the convoy farm, as well as make changes to the Summit, of course players, you know, they're going to move on to other methods. You know, generally speaking, players do adapt, but I really cannot see the benefits of making any changes to either of these XP farms, especially the resource convoy one. All this will do is slow the game down. it will slow the XP farming down for everyone, which in turn will slow down how quickly players reach season level 100 when a new season comes out. It'll slow down the shade level acquisition, which slows down material farming for players above level 1000. And for what? Please, can anyone leave a comment down below and explain why this would be beneficial to the player experience? Because I've been sat here trying to think of some positives to come out of this. And I can't think of any. Massive are currently investigating removing expertise and shade levels in PvP, or in non-invaded PvP in the Dark Zone, I believe it is. So there's not really an argument there for those people that would say, well, you know, if someone's farmed themselves to shade level 1000 and I'm still at 500, then it's not really fair because they've got that benefit. I love to see your comments, guys, because I know that you'll probably think of stuff that I haven't. But yeah, just let me know down below. Now, as a solution, I think Massive should buff XP from other sources rather than reduce the XP from these methods. The reason players farm these XP methods is because they're easy to do and they provide the most amount of XP in the shortest amount of time. When I was using the level 10 XP farm for this season, after about 30 minutes or so, I was bored out of my mind. But I knew this would allow me to reach season level 100 and get all the, you know, the new cool things for that season as soon as possible. So it was worth it for me. If Massive say increase the XP rewarded from control points or any other activity to fall in line with that from the summit, I'm sure that most people, myself included, would maybe move away from the summit and do those other activities, unless you're one of those people that enjoys doing the summit, and then you would stay there. But at least you'd have the option for those people who didn't want to do the summit. I do want to say that I think XP is the big reason to farm the summit for players under shade level 1000 and for the season ranks. But once both of those have been passed, it actually becomes a resource farm, which requires a different approach. Now, I still think the solution that I've mentioned here should stay the same. However, there needs to be, you know, some sort of resource buff applied to caches and other ways in the game to encourage players away from the summit farming for materials. Because at the moment, the reason why, you know, as I said, when you go there, you get all those materials and it's great. There just needs to be other stuff in the game to move players away from that, so at least players have a choice. Ultimately, there will always be an optimal method for anything in this game and most games. Massive cannot just go in and nerf each new method, as eventually everything will be nerfed. So much so that they'll need to start buffing things again, and then you have this never-ending cycle. The other thing to remember is we as players will be looking at this from a completely different angle to Massive or their overlords, you know, Ubisoft. We want to go from 0 to 100 efficiently as possible while still having fun. But Ubisoft will want us to, you know, have fun, sure, but try to make things take as long as possible in order to keep us players busier for longer, so that we don't feel like we've accomplished everything too soon and then we leave the game. If Massive do nerf XP in the summit and the resource convoy, then don't be surprised. Right, guys, just adding this in here because the TU 16.1 update has gone live, and I didn't expect them to do any summit changes because it wasn't part of the known issues board that I checked out yesterday, and obviously I made a video on yesterday, but it does look as though they've made changes to the summit, and I'll briefly just put it in here. From what I can tell, and I don't know if this is a bug or not, the summit is giving you no experience for any levels. So that to me sounds like a bug. We'll have to wait and see what Massive have to say about this, because as of me making this video, they've not said anything. But it's possible. It's possible they've literally nerfed the XP for everything, or to the point where you get no XP in the summit. And if that is the case, if that's what they've decided to do, then the summit is dead. Simply, Kennedy College, the summit, they're in the same bracket. No one will go in there. Basically, you'll have maybe 1%, less than 1% of people that will go in there for some targeted farming, maybe. But that's it. It will completely destroy the summit, so I really hope Massive have not done that. That's it for today's video. The only other thing that I would like to mention is I will prefer Massive to focus on other stuff than XP farms. They don't hurt anyone, and I cannot see any good reason to make changes to them, aside from just, oh, they're an exploit. But that doesn't really matter if it doesn't affect the player experience. And actually, if you're going to remove that exploit to make the player experience worse, then what is really the point? The only negative that I can see, as I said, is that the player experience will be hurt as a result of any changes there. Thanks very much for watching. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you enjoyed this one. Until the next one, epic out.